legislation that Mayor Newsom has put forward, the language that's going on the ballot. But on the other hand, I am completely sympathetic to those well-meaning people who live in fear out there. And the majority of the city, they're sincere and they're not scapegoating the poor. But let's be honest, there are really some crackpots on both ends of this issue. There are people that have pushed this issue into hate who are hateful people. They don't like the sight of poor people in the morning. And on the left, there are people who like to take a broad brush and paint everybody who would like the peace and calm and security in the neighborhood. They paint them all as racists or intolerant people. I support the people who live in fear, and I would, the police say that this can't be solved. They've admitted in committee hearings that there are laws on the books that could be used to solve this problem. There's just an institutional bias against that, and they're trying to make the progressives look bad as part of this process. The ballot initiative, no. Compassion for the people in fear, absolutely.
I do support the sit-lie ordinance for a number of reasons. One, I was on the police commission for 5 years and president for 2. And every time we had this question in public meetings, in that period of time we had over 250 public meetings around different parts of the city. Every time the captain would get the question, why can't you move these people forward? Why can't you move these people from in front of my building? And every time they would say, we don't have the laws in place to do it. We can't do it. It happened over and over and over again. I heard at the DCCC, the Central Committee the other day, that the assistant chief of the department made the comment the other day that we do have the laws on the books to be able to address this. Unfortunately, neither the chief or any of the district captains agree with that, and so somewhere they're reading the studies differently. Jane's organization, I think, did a study, and they came up with 17 different ordinances, federal, state, local, police general orders that would say that we could enforce it. All I'm saying is the cops say they can't. It impacts small businesses, it impacts retail, it impacts the pedestrians along the street. We need to have a mechanism to be able to move those people along and to stop this abusive behavior. If in fact the city attorney, which at this point he does not agree, has the ability or comes up with one of these ordinances that say that we can have, we do have the authority, then great. Let's go forward with that ordinance. Until such time that happens, we need to sit lie.
So I don't support this ordinance, and for me it's one of prioritizing our resources. I don't agree that the consensus of the police is that they do not have the ability currently to do this. I've talked to many folks who are actually walking the beat, doing community policing, that don't support this sit-lie. I think that what we need to look at is the fact that over the last 10 years we've closed down drop-in centers. We've gotten rid of benches. We've closed down the park hours of where people can hang out. And now what we're saying is if you stand around or sit and lie on the sidewalks, we're going to put you in jail. That's a failure of our policies, and I actually think that the police don't support this. I support actually organizations like Hospitality House, which offers people who are homeless the places for them to do their artwork, expanding those kind of opportunities, which is what we're doing along Mid-Market, with the funding available from the National Endowment for the Arts to provide loans to these kind of organizations and policy or programs that create activity down the street that counters the issues that we're dealing with. There are safety issues on the street, and I think all of us up here would agree with that. But the way to rid it is to actually offer alternatives instead of arresting people for being poor, which is what this is.
I do not support the legislation as it's proposed. However, I do believe that there are needs for dealing with sidewalk obstruction, and we have a law on the books that does that. What somewhat impedes the ability for the police officers to enforce it is something called the general order. And we in the Tenderloin have been working for 4 or 5 years asking that the general order be lifted. The general order would impede the sit-lie law as it exists now in its proposal from being enforced in the same manner. So until the general order is lifted, and that is something that needs the political will to be done, then the underlying sidewalk obstruction law, which is perfectly constitutional, will not go through a lot of hoops in order for it to be enacted because it's there, can easily be enforced. So it's a matter of removing the general order.
I'm also opposed to the sit-lie legislation ordinance as it's written. As Ms. Sparks has pointed out, my organization, Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, has actually identified multiple laws that are on the books currently that police can actually just enforce without civilian complaints. And for me, I just don't believe that an additional law is actually going to address the problem. So while I don't support the solution, I do acknowledge that there's a problem that exists around loitering, obstructing the sidewalk, aggressive panhandling. These are definitely issues that we need to address in our community. Ms. Walker actually brought up an example that I was going to bring up, which is the hospitality house, a great example of getting people off the streets and doing something that's much more productive and positive. Many of the people that we see in the Tenderloin and on 6th Street that are loitering and quote-unquote obstructing the sidewalk are actually housed, but they live in single-room occupancies where they don't have a lot of space. And so we need to increase the number of spaces, recreational spaces, for folks to go into during the daytime, and that is something that I would support.